Saltline Studio by Mikey presents Salt and Lanterns. This is a suspenseful, supernatural story. No gore. If you're listening alone at night, maybe keep a light on. Tony Francis sprinted through wet grass like the ground had declared war. Salt, 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 he yelled, each word punching fog out of his mouth. Behind him, the hill ate Theo Sanchez. Theo hit the slope sideways, slid on his back, and skidded like a sack of laundry thrown off a roof. Mud slapped his jacket. His rosary bounced against his chest, beads clicking like teeth. "Why?" Theo grunted, sliding. "Do you always run like the world is ending?" Tony looked over his shoulder. His eyes went wide. "Because it is currently auditioning." A shape moved at the edge of the field. And it moved wrong. Not fast, not slow. Wrong, like a shadow that had heard of knees but never owned any. It shifted between positions rather than walking, as if the air kept folding around it and setting it down somewhere new. Alan Roosevelt caught himself on both hands, the wet soil sucking at his palms as if it wanted a grip too. He looked back, and his face went gray. "I dreamed this field," he whispered. 3 nights running. The same grass, the same hill, the same cold. "I didn't think it was real. It's real," Sarah James said, from the driver's seat of their ancient sedan, which was parked at a suicidal angle near the tree line. The engine coughed and idled like it was deciding whether to quit. "And it's standing up." Jessica Martinez leaned half out of the passenger window, gripping a bottle of holy water like it was a cleaning product, and the night was a bathroom stain. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun that had surrendered to the weather. "Theo," she called, "your rosary. It's warm, isn't it?" Theo's stomach dropped. He could feel it against his chest, not glowing, not magical, just warm, the way a cross feels in your hand when you hold it during something real, as if the beads were holding onto something. The darkness wanted. The shape stopped. Just stopped. Halfway between the field and the car, it froze like the world had pressed pause. Everyone noticed. Even Tony, mid-sprint, stumbled and looked back. Tony said, "Odd. That's a new feature." Theo pushed himself upright, muddy and breathing hard, the rosary warm against his skin. The air felt thick, like someone had poured invisible syrup into the night. Sarah's voice cut through it. "Don't admire the demon. Get in the car." Tony scrambled the last few steps and threw the salt sprayer into Theo's hands like a baton. "Circle," Tony gasped. "Do the circle thing." Theo grabbed the sprayer, clicked the nozzle, and immediately realized Tony had built it in a garage with the same confidence he used to microwave a fork and call it an experiment. It made a choking sound and burped a dusty stream. "Tony," Theo said, "this is not a product. It's a prototype," Tony wheezed. "Be grateful." Alan reached the car first and yanked open the back door. He dove in like the seat was holy ground. "Move," Sarah shouted. Then, more quietly, as if to herself, "We are going to survive this, and then I'm going to update every single route plan I have ever made." Sarah leaned across the center console, eyes sharp. "Fence," Sarah snapped, pointing. "We can't reverse. There's a fence. We go forward or we don't go." Theo looked. Old wooden fence, moss, splintered posts, and beyond it, a clearing darker than the field, where the grass grew thin and the air looked bruised. "Why is it colder over there?" Jessica asked. Theo didn't answer. He didn't like the way his tongue felt heavy in his mouth, as if words might become promises. They shoved through the fence line, stumbling into the clearing. The field was behind them. The fence was broken. Ahead, the clearing sat like a dark palm pressed into the earth. Tony scrambled over and landed badly. He popped back up, pretending it was a choice. Jessica followed. Alan, Sarah last, muttering, "If we survive this, I'm updating the route plan to avoid anything with grass." The moment Theo's shoes hit the darker patch of ground, every hair on his arms lifted. No headstones, no markers, just a bare, flattened place, like a hand had pressed the earth and told it to stay. The air here was colder than the rest of the night. Not by weather, by meaning. Sarah grabbed her ears and winced. "Pressure," she said tightly, "like a storm just dropped on my head. Something is right under us." "Unmarked grave," Theo said, voice rough. Tony raised the salt sprayer and whispered, "Circle now." "Now," Theo said. They moved without a meeting, without a vote. They had learned, in the last 2 months of bad decisions, that sometimes your body knows the rule before your brain catches up. Theo sprayed salt in a shaky ring, hands trembling, the grains falling onto wet grass and black soil. The circle wasn't perfect, but it was closed. "Inside," Theo ordered. They stepped into it one by one, shoes crunching salt. The circle felt like stepping into a thin line of safety. Not a wall, a pause button, a breath. Everyone was breathing hard, like they'd just run a marathon from Satan's gym. "Okay," Tony panted. "We're in the magic circle. That's our vibe. We're..." "Tony," Sarah hissed. "Shut up." The grass outside the circle bent, not from wind, from attention. It leaned toward them, like a crowd pressing forward at a concert. "Theo," she whispered. "It knows. You." Theo stared at the bare patch of earth at the center of the clearing. Looking felt like acknowledging. But the rosary on his chest throbbed with warmth, and his throat tightened. A voice spoke from the soil. Not loud, not a scream. A voice like a man who had been buried for a long time and had learned to talk through dirt. "Theodore." Theo's blood turned to ice. He hadn't said his full name tonight. He had never said it at this place. Alan's eyes snapped to Theo, panicked. "You didn't tell it that..." "No," Theo said, and his voice cracked. "I didn't..." The soil vibrated. A low, angry hum rolled under their feet, the ground answering like a drum. Jessica's lips moved. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for Theo. She whispered a prayer her grandmother taught her when she was little and afraid of thunderstorms. "San Miguel Arcángel, defiéndenos en la batalla." The air tightened. The grass outside the circle shuddered, and something invisible pressed against the salt line. The ring held, barely. Tony's eyes filled with tears. He wiped them with his sleeve, like he was swatting a bug. "I hate this lifestyle brand," he whispered. Sarah reached into her backpack and pulled out a flashlight, a map, and a small first aid kit, like she was preparing for a haunted picnic. "What's the plan?" she asked. "Quick." 2 sentences. Theo swallowed. When the voice spoke his name, something in his mind lit up, like a thread pulling toward a knot. The third eye Abuela Luz had warned him about. The thing he hated, calling a gift, because gifts don't feel like headaches. Theo looked at the soil. He didn't see a monster. He saw patterns, a faint outline in the grass, A subtle spiral where the blades leaned. Not a cage, he thought. Not a grave that holds something in. It's using the grave like a doorbell, Theo said, the words landing heavy. The person buried here made a pledge, not to God, to something else. The pledge soaked into the ground. Now this place rings, and something far away answers. So the grave is a phone? Tony blinked. A doorbell, Theo repeated. And we just knocked? Alan had his audio recorder out, red light blinking. If no one records this, it didn't happen, he said quietly. And I need it to have happened. The voice came again, deeper now, as if closer to the surface. Theodore Sanchez. Theo's heart hammered. Jessica grabbed his wrist. Don't answer, she said sharply. Don't reply. Don't bargain. Theo nodded. Jaw clenched. The air thickened further, pressing on their ears like an invisible hand. Sarah flinched and squeezed her temples. I feel it, she said. It's like the pressure before a storm. Getting worse? Tony's salt circle trembled. Not physically. Theo couldn't explain it, but the boundary started to strain in his mind's eye, like watching cracks form in glass that hadn't broken yet. The salt was still there. The line was still closed. But the pressure behind it was enormous. Find a marker, Theo said, voice sharp. There has to be something physical. A token. A tag. Something tied to the pledge. Sarah dropped to her knees inside the circle and swept her flashlight beam along the ground. Her movements were controlled, efficient, like she was searching for keys under a couch, not evidence of an ancient mistake. Here, Sarah said suddenly. Metal. She reached toward a half-buried scrap near the edge of the grave patch. Theo grabbed her shoulder. Don't touch it bare, he warned. Sarah paused, then used the sleeve of her hoodie to grab the object. It came free, with a wet suck. The moment the tag left the soil, the grass outside the circle surged flat, every blade pressing outward like something underneath had flinched. The soil voice snarled. A sound like rage chewed through gravel. The salt line trembled visibly. Sarah's ears popped. Pressure spike. She hissed. It felt that. A rusted metal tag. A chain fragment still attached, corroded green, and scratched deep into the surface. A compass, but twisted. The points didn't align. The north needle bent like a hook. It's the same symbol from the forums, Alan whispered. Theo's rosary warmed again, as if recognizing enemy handwriting. This is a pledge tag, Theo said. A marker. A claim on this ground. Alan's recorder crackled. Under the soil voice, another sound threaded through. Quieter. A second voice. Counting. 1, 2, 3. Alan's eyes widened. Guys. There's another voice. It's counting. Sarah looked at him. What is it counting? Alan replayed the clip, eyes narrowing. The numbers overlapped with each person who had spoken. 1 for Theo's name. 2 for Jessica's prayer. 3 for Tony's complaint. It's not counting time, Alan said slowly. It's counting participants. Every time one of us talks, the number goes up. It's logging us. Theo's mind snapped sharp. Counting meant ritual. Ritual meant rules. Rules meant survival. So, we're a survey. Tony swallowed hard. More like a phone tree. Theo's jaw clenched. One site calls the next. And now we're on the list. Theo could feel the circle thinning, not breaking, just bending under something heavier than it was built to hold. The salt line was physically intact, but the pressure behind it was growing, and his third eye could feel it bending. Bless the tag, Theo said. Jess water. Sarah, light on the soil. Alan, keep recording but stay back. Tony, hold the line and do not sneeze. Jessica stepped forward inside the circle and flicked holy water toward the bare patch of soil. The droplets hit the ground and hissed on contact, steam curling from earth that should have been cold. A shadow rose from the grave patch. Not a full body, not a monster shape, more like a stain thickening in the air. The grass leaned harder. The counting voice sped up. 4, 5, 6. Tony sneezed. It came out of nowhere. Violent, useless sneeze that shook his whole body. His foot kicked. Salt scattered. A gap opened in the circle, no bigger than a hand. The night lunged. The shadow stain snapped toward the opening, the grass whipping, the air rushing like something hungry had smelled a crack. Sarah grabbed Tony by the hoodie and yanked him backward. Then the soil voice spoke from inside the circle, not from the grave patch, not from outside, from between them, from the air they were breathing. You already belong to the map, it said, gentle as a lullaby. Tony's face went white. Alan's recorder shrieked static. Jessica's stomach flipped. Not from fear, from recognition. Something in that voice was covered, layered like a lie wearing a smile. Her gift fired like an alarm bell in her chest. The same instinct that told her when a story was hiding something underneath. That's not real, Jessica said sharply. It's bluffing. It's not inside the circle. It's pushing its voice through the gap, like shouting through a mail slot. Theo looked at her. She looked certain. Not brave certain. Truth certain. Theo threw himself toward the gap, dumped salt from the sprayer, and spoke. Not shouted. Spoke. In the name of Jesus Christ, you have no right to cross this line. It was not a spell, not a charm, not a movie line. It was a claim of truth. The voice inside the circle collapsed, like a soap bubble, like a bluff called. The circle held. Everyone inside the ring froze, panting. Jessica's eyes were bright with tears she refused to spill. Say it again, she whispered to Theo. The prayer. Out loud, Theo lifted his rosary, the beads cool now, heavy in his hand. Saint Michael the Archangel, Theo said, voice firm, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. The soil voice snarled. The ground vibrated violently, like a growl in the earth. Theo continued anyway, because stopping felt like surrender. May God rebuke him. We humbly pray. The air loosened, not gone, but giving them a fraction of space. Jessica exhaled shakily. Tony wiped his eyes again. Alan's recorder beeped once, the waveform spiking into a compass-shaped pattern before flattening. He stared at it but said nothing. Not yet. Sarah spoke fast. We can't stay in a circle forever. What do we do? Theo looked at the tag in Sarah's hand. The compass symbol. The twisted points. It's the pledge anchor. If we cleanse it, we weaken the connection. We don't smash it. We unclaim it. Tony fumbled his backpack open. It was full of supplies that were half useful and half cursed by poor planning. Extra batteries, snacks, duct tape. 2 flashlights, a cheap EMF gadget, a spray bottle labeled salt like you mean it, and a screw-top plastic jar that used to hold snacks. Tony held up the jar. Emergency container. Theo nodded. Perfect. Jessica sprinkled holy water onto the tag one more time. The compass symbol blurred, like ink running. Then she pressed the tag between her palms and whispered, "Lord, we ask you to reclaim what was stolen." She didn't sound dramatic. She sounded sincere. The air shivered. The soil voice screamed without volume. The ground shook. And outside the circle, something slammed into the boundary hard enough to make the salt line jump. Sarah's eyes widened. That worked. It's angry. Tony squeaked. Good. Jessica said. Fierce. Let it be angry. Theo took the tag, wrapped it in the blessed cloth Jessica kept in her bag, and dropped it into the jar. Tony screwed the lid on with trembling hands. Theo's rosary went suddenly cold against his chest. The warmth drained from it like heat leaving a room when a door opens to winter. He gripped it, startled. It's paying closer attention, Theo muttered. Not less. The counting voice on Alan's recorder stuttered, then resumed in a different tone. 7, 8. Theo's stomach twisted. It's still counting. Alan's face was tight. It's not stopping, because we put it in a jar. This is bigger than one tag. Car, Theo said. Now. We don't stay for the encore. Sarah counted. 1, 2, 3. They burst out of the circle. Theo kicked salt outward as he ran, scattering grains like breadcrumbs of defiance. Jessica flung holy water behind them in a wide arc. The droplets hit the grass and hissed where they landed. Tony clutched the jar and sprinted, feet slipping on wet grass. I hate cardio. Sarah's ears popped again. Pressure surged around them like wading through deep water. It's following, she said through clenched teeth. Faster. Alan ran last, glancing back despite himself. The shadow shape surged forward, more defined now. A tall smear of darkness, trying to remember being a person. It did not have a face, but it had attention. It hit the scattered salt and slowed, as if the grains were sand in gears. Tony stumbled mid-stride. For half a second, his vision flickered. He saw the clearing in daylight. Decades ago, a man in a long coat pressing a metal tag into the soil with shaking hands, whispering something that didn't sound like any language Tony knew. The man's face was terrified and certain at the same time. Then it was gone. Night, running, fear. Tony's face was chalk white. Someone chose this, he breathed. I saw him. He put the tag in the ground on purpose. No one had time to process that. Theo reached the fence first and vaulted it badly, landing on his side. Sarah followed, smoother. Then Jessica. Then Tony. Then Alan, who caught his foot and nearly ate dirt. Sarah threw herself into the driver's seat and twisted the key. The engine coughed. Once, twice. Theo's heart seized. The engine caught. Doors slammed. Sarah gunned the car forward, smashing through the weakest part of the fence with a splintering crack. The sedan jolted, but kept moving. They shot down a narrow dirt road that turned into an actual road, like the world was pretending this had been a normal detour. Behind them, the clearing swallowed itself into darkness. The air in the car was thick with breath and fear. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Tony whispered, very softly, "We lived Sarah's knuckles were white on the wheel. Barely. Jessica twisted in her seat, staring out the rear window. Do you see it? Theo looked back. The field was gone behind trees, but at the edge of the tree line, far back, a figure stood. Not the shadow stain, a tall person shape, still, observing. It held something. A reflective surface, like a clipboard or a tablet. A compass symbol glinted faintly, like metal catching moonlight on purpose. Theo's stomach dropped. This wasn't a haunting, watching them. This was someone taking notes. Stop looking, Sarah said, eyes on the road. Don't make eye contact with things we don't understand. Theo forced himself to face forward, but the image stayed, burned into his mind like a photograph taken without permission. The figure hadn't moved, hadn't chased, hadn't threatened. It had watched, like a scientist observing lab results. That was worse. Sarah drove in silence for 5 miles, then pulled into a petrol station that looked like it had been built for people who never sprinted from supernatural doorbells. Fluorescent lights hummed. A vending machine glowed. A lonely ice freezer sat outside like a sad robot. Sarah parked under a light and cut the engine. Everyone sat for a second, breathing. Then one of the fluorescent tubes above them popped. Loud. Glass sprinkled down onto the pavement. Everyone flinched. Tony nearly dropped the jar. Sarah recovered first. Just a bulb, she said, though her hands were shaking. Debrief. We don't get to panic until after we make a plan. Tony raised a hand. I would like to request a small panic. Denied. Jessica turned to Theo. It said your name. Your full name. How? Theo swallowed. I don't know. But when it spoke, I felt something, like a thread, a pattern pulling tight. Alan leaned forward. The third eye thing. Theo nodded, reluctant. Yeah. I see patterns when it's close. Connections. Sarah rubbed her forehead. That's horrifyingly useful. Theo stared at the jar in Tony's lap. We have the tag. That's good. We weakened the anchor. Tony held the jar protectively. This jar has seen things. Jessica nodded toward the road. But it still marked us. Theo felt a strange weight settle in his chest. Not despair, not defeat. Responsibility, the kind of leadership that isn't shouting. Alan's face was pale, and there was someone in the trees. Not the shadow, a person, human. Holding a symbol, Sarah's eyes narrowed. You all saw that? Theo nodded slowly. Yeah, Tony swallowed. So it's not just monsters. Jessica's mouth tightened. It never is. Theo exhaled, then forced himself to say what he didn't want to say. We need help. Sarah looked at him. From who? Theo hesitated. Abuela Luz didn't hunt. She didn't drive into fields at midnight. But she knew rules. She knew what not to do. And she had warned him before they left not to treat evil like a hobby. He pulled out his phone. His hands shook as he dialed. Abuela answered before the second ring, her voice warm and sharp, like she'd been awake waiting for him to prove he was an idiot. Theodore, she said. You sound dirty. Theo swallowed a laugh that threatened to become a sob. Hi, Abuela. Are you safe? She asked. And the humor vanished. Tell me the truth. Theo looked at his friends, all watching him, all suddenly quiet. We're safe, Theo said. For now. Abuela exhaled slowly. Then, speak. Theo glanced at the jar, at the compass symbol, at the memory of the soil voice, saying his name like it owned it. We found an unmarked grave, Theo said. There was a tag, a pledge. Something answered, and it called me by name. Abuela's silence on the line was heavy. Then she said, very calmly, did it call you by your full name? Yes. Abuela's voice hardened, not angry, but focused. Then listen carefully. Do not speak your name in places you do not know. Do not answer when something calls. Do not accept gifts. Do not promise anything. And do not, under any circumstances, keep that tag in your house. Tony mouthed, oops, silently. Theo winced. It's in a jar. In Tony's backpack. Abuela made a sound like a sigh and a prayer at once. Not your house. Still dangerous. Sarah leaned in and whispered, ask her about the compass symbol. Theo did. Abuela's breath caught. A compass? You know it. I know the idea, Abuela said quietly. A mark used by those who map doors. Those who make pledges into pathways. Alan's eyes widened. Jessica's grip tightened on the holy water bottle. Abuela continued. It means someone is organizing this. Not random. Not just hauntings. A network. Theo's mouth went dry. We saw a person. In the trees. Watching, Abuela's voice sharpened. Do not chase them. Do not confront them. You are children. Tony bristled. We are teens. Abuela, through the phone, somehow conveyed the look she would have given him if she could see him. Children. Theo nodded. What do we do? Abuela's tone softened. You pray. You stay together. You follow your rules. And you find a priest who understands. I will call Father Gabriel. Theo's chest loosened slightly. Father Gabriel Rivera, the priest at their parish back home who had blessed Theo's rosary and told him, gently, that faith was not a weapon, but it was still protection. Thank you, Theo whispered. Abuela paused, then said something that made Theo's stomach twist again. Theodore, she said softly, if it marked you, it will try again. A mark is not a wound, mijo. It is an address. It tells them where to send the next invitation. The car went very quiet. Then Abuela's voice shifted, becoming something older and steadier than advice. A prayer. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you peace. Theo listened, eyes closed, as she spoke the blessing over the phone. Words steady, ancient, stronger than fear, because they were true. They rolled over him like warm water, and for a moment, the night outside felt smaller. When she finished, Theo opened his eyes and found all four of his friends watching him like he'd brought back oxygen. Sarah nodded once. Okay, we keep moving. We don't sleep anywhere near that grave. Jessica's face softened. Tell her gracias. From me, Theo repeated it. Abuela said, tell Jessica she's brave, but bravery is not the same as being reckless. And Theodore? Yes. If you slide down another hill like laundry, you will break your neck. Walk like God gave you bones for a reason. Theo huffed a shaky laugh. Yes, Abuela. She hung up, and the silence in the car was different now. Not fear, silence. Held silence, like someone had lit a candle in a dark room. It didn't remove the dark, but it gave them something to look at. Before they crossed into New Jersey, the next state south, Sarah took an exit that wasn't on her printed road. "Because there's a church," she said, before anyone could ask. It was small, tucked behind a diner and a row of bare winter trees. A simple wooden building with a white steeple and a sign that read, "St. Bridget's. All are welcome." The parking lot was empty. Theo felt the air change the second they stepped out of the car. Not dramatic, not fireworks, just different. Like the night had to lower its voice here. Alan whispered, "It feels quieter in my head." Theo nodded. Consecrated ground. Inside, warm air met them. A few candles flickered near the altar. One small lamp left gold pockets of light. Theo pulled out his phone and called Father Gabriel. The priest answered on the fourth ring, voice heavy with sleep, but sharp underneath. "Theodore, your abuela already called. We have a pledge tag," Theo said, "in a jar. We're at a church, St. Bridget's, near the state line." Father Gabriel was quiet for a moment. Then, set the jar on the altar rail. "Don't open it, pray over it. I'll call the parish in the morning and arrange for it to be handled properly." "Handled how?" Tony whispered. "By people who don't carry pledge tokens in snack jars." Father Gabriel said, not unkindly, "Leave it there. Walk away. Don't keep trophies." Tony looked wounded. "It's not a trophy. It's evidence." Sarah pointed at him. "Evidence you don't store next to snacks." They set the jar on the altar rail. Theo knelt briefly and prayed. Not for victory, not for power, for protection, for his friends, for the people who lived near that unmarked grave and didn't know what was underneath. Jessica knelt beside him. She didn't need to be asked. Her lips moved silently, and her hands were steady. Sarah stood behind them, flashlight off, arms crossed. She didn't kneel, but her head was bowed, and that was enough. Alan sat in a pew and stared at his recorder, replaying the audio on silent, watching the waveforms pulse like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Tony stood in the aisle, hands in his pockets, and for once said nothing at all. He looked at the stained glass window above the altar, where a saint held a lantern over dark water, and thought about the man in the coat he'd seen in his flash, the man who had chosen this. When they rose to leave, Theo looked at his palm under the altar lamp. A faint, dirty smear sat on his skin. Lines, points, a twisted compass, faint as a bruise. His breath stopped. "Theo." Jessica grabbed his wrist, staring. Sarah's voice went tight. "That wasn't there before." Alan stared. "It marked you." "Literally." Tony made a small, horrified noise. "Okay. I officially vote we become normal people again." Theo stumbled to the small sink near the sacristy and scrubbed his palm under cold water until his skin burned. The mark faded slowly, like an ink stain giving up. Reluctant, he turned off the tap, breathing hard. The mark was nearly gone. Nearly. His palm still felt warm where the lines had been, like skin remembering a shape it wasn't supposed to know. Father Gabriel, still on the phone, spoke quietly. "Don't be afraid of the mark, Theodore. But don't forget it either. It is an address, just as your abuela told you. They know where you are now. So you make sure God knows first." Theo swallowed hard. "Yes. Father, go," the priest said. "Stay together. And Theodore, don't treat evil like a hobby." The line went quiet. Jessica touched Theo's shoulder. You okay? Theo looked at his palm. Nearly clean, nearly normal. But the shape was still there if he looked too hard. Like a word on the tip of his tongue that wouldn't leave. Yeah, he lied. Then no. But we're moving. Back in the car, Sarah pulled onto the road. The headlights cut through ordinary darkness. Theo pressed his palm against the cold window. The mark was gone, but his skin still remembered the shape, the way a tongue finds a loose tooth, prodding the empty space, making sure it's still empty. It wasn't. In the back seat, Alan stared at his recorder. The waveform on the screen pulsed once, compass-shaped, then flattened. It knows how we fight, Alan said quietly. Tony leaned over, trying to see. Does it know I have terrible cardio? Nobody laughed. The car rolled on, heading south. 5 teenagers, 1 jar lighter, 1 mark heavier, driving toward a state they didn't know was already waiting for them. Somewhere behind them, in a clearing without headstones, the soil still remembered their names. The grass leaned inward, as if waiting for the next ring. Somewhere in the trees, a figure with a reflective surface noted the direction of their headlights and wrote something in a hand that was not entirely human. And somewhere ahead, past the state line, in a rented house with too many mirrors, a light turned on by itself. Then another. Then all of them. If something calls your name, don't be the one who answers. You've been listening to Salt and Lanterns. Stay together. Keep the light on.